When my wife of 20 years told me she was leaving me for my business partner, I collapsed in our kitchen, sobbing like a child. 3 days later, I was sitting in my attorney's office, discovering my entire life savings had vanished. That's when I realized marriage isn't just a union of hearts, it's also a merger that can have a hostile takeover. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're from. Because trust me, this story twists more than a roller coaster built by a madman. My name is Jonas Mendes. For most of my life, I've been the guy who believed in happy endings. Deu who fought love conqueredou. Defu who trusted rutue asili. That summer afternoon was unusually hot, even for July. I remember loosening my tie as I walked through our front door, calling out Nora's name like I had for the past 2 decades. The house felt different somehow. Quieter. As if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I found her in our bedroom, 2 suitcases open on our king-sized bed, the same bed we'd picked out together 12 years ago. "You're home early," she said without turning around, her voice flat and unfamiliar. Meeting ended sooner than expected. I leaned against the doorframe, watching as she methodically folded designer clothes I'd bought her for our anniversary. "Going somewhere?" She finally turned to face me, and I barely recognized her. Not physically, she was still stunning at 45, with those green eyes that had made me stumble over my words when we first met. But something had changed behind them. Something cold and resolved. "E quem te do desanimore, Jonas?" She gestured vaguely around the room, at the life we'd built. "This isn't what I want." "What are you talking about? If something's wrong, we can fix it. We always have." Her laugh was bitter, like coffee left too long on the burner. "That's the problem. You think everything can be fixed. Some things are just broken." "Is this about the argument last week?" "I told you ide back miles et." "It's about Richard." 2 words. Just 2 simple words, and my entire world imploded. Script part separator, Richard. My business partner. My best friend for 15 years. The guy who'd been best man at our wedding. The man who held my shoulder at my father's funeral and told me everything would be okay. For a moment, I couldn't process what she was saying. My brain refused to connect the dots that were so clearly laid out before me. "What about Richard?" I asked, though deep down, I already knew. "I love him, Jonas." She said it so calmly, as if telling me she preferred chicken to fish. "We've been seeing each other for 8 months. He makes me feel alive again." 8 months. While I was working late to pay for our beach house in the Hamptons, they were together. While I was planning our second honeymoon to Bali, they were laughing behind my back. "That can't be right," I whispered. "Richard vou do te. He's waiting for me," she interrupted, checking her watch. A luxury timepiece I'd given her for her birthday. "I'm sorry you found out this way. We were going to tell you together, but..." I couldn't breathe. The room was spinning, walls closing in. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" Her expression softened slightly. Pity, I realized. Not remorse. The way you look at a wounded animal on the side of the road. "It wasn't planned, Jonas. It just happened." She zipped up the first suitcase. "Richard understands me in ways you never could." I fell to my knees, dignity abandoned. 20 years, Nora. 20 years. I know. She had the audacity to sound sad. But I can't live a lie anymore. When the front door closed behind her, I remained frozen on our bedroom floor, surrounded by the remnants of our life together. Photographs, shared memories, the lingering scent of her perfume. I stayed there until darkness fell, unable to move, unable to comprehend how quickly everything had crumbled. The next 3 days passed in a blur of sleepless nights and unanswered calls. I couldn't eat. Couldn't focus. Friends left concerned voicemails I didn't return. Script part separator, On the 4th day, I dragged myself to the office. I needed normalcy, routine, something to anchor me to reality. What I found instead was an empty desk where Richard's office had been. His nameplate gone, personal items vanished, as if he'd never existed. "Mr. Mendes?" My assistant Jennifer stood in the doorway, concern etched across her face. "I've been trying to reach you. What happened to Richard's office?" She shifted uncomfortably. He cleared it out on Monday. Said he was starting his own firm. A pause. He took the Harrington account with him. And Peterson. And Westlake. Our 3 biggest clients. Just like that, gone. There's something else, Jennifer said, handing me an envelope. This came from the bank yesterday. The statement inside showed withdrawals, massive ones, from our business account. Authorized dual signatures, Richard's and mine. Except I'd never signed anything. Call Marcus, I told Jennifer. Tell him I need to see him immediately. Marcus Cole had been my attorney for 15 years. We played golf on Sundays. He'd help me understand what was happening, how to fix this nightmare. 2 hours later, sitting in his office, I realized the depth of my naivety. The signatures look authentic, Jonas, Marcus said, examining the bank documents. And there's more. He slid another folder across his desk. Your home equity line of credit was maxed out last month. $300,000. Transferred to an offshore account. That's impossible. I never. The paperwork has your signature. And Nora's. My stomach dropped. Nora wouldn't. There's more, he interrupted, his expression grave. Your retirement accounts were liquidated 6 weeks ago. Early withdrawal penalties were paid. The funds are gone. I couldn't breathe. How much? All of it. Just under $2 million. The room tilted. My life savings. Our future. Everything I'd worked for, disappeared. Jonas, Marcus leaned forward, his voice gentle but urgent. When did you last check your financial statements? I couldn't remember. Nora had handled our personal finances for years. I trusted her completely. They've been planning this, Marcus said. This isn't a spontaneous affair. This is calculated theft. Script part separator, The truth hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just heartbreak. This was a coordinated attack on everything I'd built. Why would she do this? I whispered, more to myself than, we need emergency injunctions on any remaining assets before they disappear too. That night, I returned to our empty house. Wedding photos still hung on walls, mocking me. In our home office, I found Nora's filing cabinet unlocked, unusual for her. She'd always been meticulously private about her papers. Inside was a folder labeled investments that I'd never seen before. My hands trembled as I opened it to find account statements for properties in the Cayman Islands. Properties purchased 6 months ago under a corporate entity I didn't recognize. My phone rang, startling me. Unknown number. Hello. Jonas. Richard's voice. My former best friend. I hope you're being reasonable about all this. Rage surged through me. Reasonable? You stole my wife, my clients, and my money, and you want reasonable? His laugh was cold, unfamiliar. Nora was never really yours. She settled for you because she thought you had potential. A pause. We didn't want it to go this way, but you forced our hand. What are you talking about? The audit notification from the IRS. We know you requested it. I hadn't. But suddenly, I understood that there was much more happening than I realized. You should back off, Jonas, he continued. Some things are better left alone. For everyone's safety. The threat was unmistakable. Is that why you called? To threaten me? I asked, a new kind of anger building, focused, clear. To warn you. As a courtesy for old time's sake. Don't make this messier than it needs to be. The line went dead. I sat in the darkness, something shifting inside me. The devastated husband was giving way to something else, something colder and more determined. If they wanted war, they'd get one. Script part separator, Little did I know, this was just the beginning of my nightmare. The next morning, a courier delivered foreclosure papers on our home, a home I thought was nearly paid off. Somehow, Nora had taken out a second mortgage without my knowledge. I called Marcus immediately. They're moving fast. They want to force you into bankruptcy before you can fight back. How is this possible? I signed those mortgage documents myself years ago. Not these you didn't, Marcus said gravely. These signatures are recent. Someone either forged them or... You signed without reading. My mind flashed to the stack of papers Nora had me sign 3 months ago. Just insurance updates, she'd said, catching me as I rushed out the door to a client meeting. I spent the next week in a daze, piecing together the extent of their betrayal. Our joint accounts were drained. Credit cards maxed out. Even my beloved vintage Mustang was gone from the garage, sold, according to the DMV, with a transfer of ownership bearing my signature. The humiliation was suffocating. I couldn't face my colleagues, couldn't bear the pitying looks. I took a leave of absence from the company I'd founded. My company, now effectively controlled by Richard through proxy votes he'd somehow acquired. I was sitting in my nearly empty kitchen. Nora had even taken the good dishes, when Jennifer called. Mr. Mendez? I think you should know. Richard just announced his engagement to Nora. Engagement. They can't even file for divorce for months. There's a company party tonight celebrating their new firm. Everyone's invited except you. That's when something inside me snapped. Not into pieces, but into focus. This wasn't just about losing Nora. This was a calculated takedown of my entire life. I opened my laptop and began searching property records, bank statements, anything that might give me leverage. 3 hours in, I found something peculiar. A safety deposit box renewal notice addressed to Nora at our home, from a bank I'd never heard of. Script part separator, The next morning, I stood outside that bank as soon as it opened, armed with our marriage certificate and my ID. To my surprise, they allowed me access. Nora had listed me as co-owner but had never mentioned it. Inside that safety deposit box was a revelation that turned my stomach. Photos of Richard and Nora dating back not 8 months, but 3 years. Vacation pictures from trips she'd claimed were girls' weekends. There were also copies of business plans to split off from my company and take our top clients. Most damning was a handwritten ledger detailing every account they'd siphoned money from and where it had gone. They hadn't just stolen from me, they'd been laundering money through shell companies for years. I photographed everything with shaking hands, then carefully replaced it all exactly as I'd found it. They couldn't know I'd discovered their paper trail. That afternoon, I received a text from Nora. Need to pick up more clothes. Will be by at 7. Please don't be there. I replied simply, fine. But I wasn't planning to make anything fine for them anymore. I called Marcus, who was already building our legal strategy. I've got everything, I told him. Documents, photos, proof of their relationship going back 3 years. This changes everything, he said. If she was unfaithful for that long, and conspiring to defraud you, e don't just want a fair divorce, interrupted. E want justice. That's when Marcus went silent for a moment. There might be another approach, he said finally. One that hits them where it hurts most. I'm listening. Your will, Jonas. Have you updated it since all this happened? I hadn't thought about my will in years. Nora was still the primary beneficiary of my life insurance policy, my pension, everything. They've been planning your financial demise, Marcus continued. Maybe it's time to plan what happens with whatever they don't manage to steal. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Script part separator, 2 days later, I sat across from Marcus as he outlined my new estate plan, one that would ensure Nora and Richard would never see a penny of anything I owned, even if something happened to me. You're sure about this? Marcus asked, sliding the papers toward me. I nodded, signing my name with newfound determination. Absolutely. Once we file these, they become part of the public record. They'll know. Good, I said. Let them worry for a change. That evening, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. Mr. Mendes. This is Detective Sawyer, Financial Crimes Division. We received some concerning documentation regarding your accounts. Could you come to the station tomorrow morning? My heart raced. Who submitted this documentation? That's confidential, sir. But I can tell you it involves allegations of tax fraud spanning several years. They were framing me. Of course they were. The next morning, I arrived at the police station with Marcus by my side. Detective Sawyer, a stern-faced woman with calculating eyes, led us to an interview room. Mr. Mendez, we have records showing you've been concealing income and falsifying tax documents since 2019. She spread papers across the table, documents bearing my signature that I'd never seen before. These aren't mine, I said. The signatures are forged. That's what everyone says, she replied coolly. But our forensic accountants have tracked the money to offshore accounts in your name. Marcus intervened. Detective, my client is the victim here. We have evidence that his wife and former business partner have been systematically defrauding him. Convenient timing, she said skeptically. Maybe this will change your perspective. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos I'd taken of the safety deposit box contents, particularly the handwritten ledger in Nora's distinctive script. Script part separator, Detective Sawyer's expression shifted as she examined the photos. This ledger, these dates match our investigation timeline. You're saying your wife wrote this? Every entry is in her handwriting, I confirmed. And notice the transfers listed here? They align with the fraudulent transactions you're accusing me of making. She studied the evidence with increasing interest. You have the original documents. In a safety deposit box registered to my wife. I can take you there. A flicker of understanding crossed her face. Mr. Mendez, if what you're showing me is authentic, the direction of our investigation might need adjustment. By that afternoon, everything had changed. Instead of investigating me, Detective Sawyer was building a case against Nora and Richard for conspiracy, fraud, and tax evasion. The safety deposit box had been officially examined, its contents catalogued as evidence. But Nora and Richard didn't know that yet. That evening, right on schedule, Nora arrived at our house. I watched from my car parked down the street as she used her key to enter. 10 minutes later, I followed. She startled when I walked into our bedroom, where she was emptying drawers into a suitcase. I thought you weren't going to be here, she snapped. Changed my mind. It's still my house. She rolled her eyes. Not for long. The foreclosure is fraudulent, I interrupted. Just like the signatures on those documents. Something flickered in her eyes, fear, quickly masked by defiance. I don't know what you're talking about. 3 years, Nora. Not 8 months. You and Richard have been planning this for 3 years. Her composure faltered momentarily. You're being paranoid. I know about the safety deposit box, I said quietly. I've seen everything. The blood drained from her face. You had no right. The same right you had to steal my life savings? To forge my signature? To launder money through our accounts? Script part separator, She took a step back, bumping into the dresser behind her. You don't understand what you're talking about. I moved closer, my voice dangerously calm. I understand perfectly. The offshore accounts. The shell companies. The fake signatures. Detective Sawyer understands too. Detective who? Her voice pitched higher with panic. Financial Crimes Division. They were initially investigating me, thanks to the evidence you planted. Now they're building a case against you and Richard. Federal charges, Nora. Prison time. You're bluffing, she whispered, but her trembling hands betrayed her. The ledger in your handwriting was particularly helpful, I continued. Very detailed. The IRS loves details. She lunged for her phone. I need to call Richard. Go ahead. He's probably already getting a visit from Detective Sawyer's colleagues. Nora's fingers froze over the screen. This isn't what you think, Jonas. We never meant to. To what? Destroy me? Steal everything I've worked for? Make me look like a criminal? Richard said you'd never notice, she blurted, then immediately looked horrified at her admission. Il alguém biter-lhe. So I was just too stupid to catch on? That's your defense. Not stupid. Just trusting. She almost looked regretful. It was supposed to be cleaner than this. You weren't supposed to find out until everything was finalized. The calculated coldness of her statement struck me like a physical blow. How long had you been planning to leave me? She looked away. Since the Miller contract fell through. When I realized you'd never be as successful as Richard. 3 years ago. When I'd lost a major client and fallen into a brief depression. When I'd needed her most. So all this time, Every anniversary dinner, every birthday celebration, every night we spent together, it was all a lie? Not at first, she said quietly. But eventually, yes. Script part separator, I stood there, facing the woman I'd loved for 2 decades, and felt something inside me harden into resolve. Get out, I said quietly. Jonas, we can talk about this. Maybe there's a way. A way what? To avoid prison. To keep the money you stole? Issue my head. That safety deposit box is evidence in a criminal investigation now. There's no coming back from this. Her eyes narrowed, calculating even now. What do you want? There must be something. I've already gotten what I wanted, I replied. Justice. She grabbed her half-packed suitcase. This isn't over, Jonas. Actually, it is. Oh, and Nora. I changed my will. You'll get nothing if something happens to me. Not a penny. The shock on her face was almost worth everything I'd been through. Almost. After she left, I poured myself a scotch and called Marcus. She knows. Good, he said. The detective called. They're executing search warrants on Richard's office tomorrow morning. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of legal proceedings. Richard and Nora were both arrested, then released on bail. Their assets were frozen. The evidence against them was mounting daily as forensic accountants uncovered the full extent of their scheme. My company board voted unanimously to remove Richard and reinstate me as CEO. Clients began returning, many apologizing for being misled by Richard's lies about my financial improprieties. But the most satisfying moment came 6 weeks after Nora's arrest, when I received a call from her attorney. Mr. Mendez, my client would like to discuss a settlement. There's nothing to discuss, I replied. The criminal charges aren't something I can make disappear. She's prepared to make restitution. Retorne everything. I laughed. Too late for that. But I'm curious, why the sudden change of heart? The prosecution has offered her a deal. Testify against Mr. Phillips in exchange for reduced charges. Richard. They were turning on each other. Script part separator, So Richard was the primary target now. Not surprising. He'd always been the mastermind, with Nora as his willing accomplice. I tell you what, I said to her lawyer. I'll consider dropping my civil claims against Nora if she provides complete testimony, not just what the prosecution wants, but everything. 3 days later, I sat across from Nora in a conference room at the prosecutor's office. She looked diminished somehow, her designer clothes replaced by a simple blouse and slacks, her makeup subdued. Thank you for coming, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. I didn't come for you. I came for the truth. She nodded, sliding a thick folder across the table. It is all here. Every account. Every transaction. Every plan we made. I opened it, scanning the detailed confession. When did it start? Really start? After your father died, she admitted quietly. You were so broken, and Richard, he was strong. Confident. He showed me bank statements, convinced me you were hiding money. My father's death had nearly destroyed me. While I was grieving, they were plotting. And were there others? Other women for Richard? She'll get bitterly. Many. I found out too late that I wasn't special, just useful. For the first time, I felt a flicker of pity for her. She'd been manipulated too, though that didn't excuse her choices. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Diane Flores, entered the room. Mrs. Mendez has been extremely cooperative, she informed me. Her testimony will be crucial in our case against Mr. Phillips. And what does she get in return? I asked. Reduced charges. Probation instead of prison time, assuming full restitution. I turned to Nora. Why should I agree to this? Because Richard deserves worse than I do, she said simply. He used both of us. Script part separator, Sitting there, facing the woman who'd once been my everything, I felt centuries older than I had just months earlier. There's something else, Nora said, her voice barely above a whisper. She pulled another folder from her bag. Something Richard doesn't know I kept. Inside were documents showing that Richard hadn't just been defrauding me. He'd been stealing from our clients for years, long before Nora became involved. The evidence was damning and comprehensive. Why are you giving me this? She looked directly at me for the first time. Because when this is over, you deserve to rebuild. Your reputation. Your company. Your life. It wasn't remorse, not exactly. More like acknowledgement of the wreckage she'd helped create. 2 days later, our divorce was finalized with terms heavily favoring me. The financial crimes case against Richard continued building, with each new revelation more shocking than the last. He'd been running Ponzi schemes, falsifying investment returns, and embezzling client funds for nearly a decade. My reputation in the business community began to recover as the truth emerged. Colleagues who distanced themselves suddenly wanted meetings. Former clients returned, apologetic and eager to resume our relationship. The media caught wind of the story, prominent businessman framed by cheating wife and treacherous partner. I declined all interview requests, but the narrative worked in my favor regardless. Then came the day of Richard's arraignment on federal charges. I sat in the back of the courtroom, watching as my former best friend shuffled in, handcuffed and wearing an orange jumpsuit. Gone was the confident, charismatic man who'd charmed his way through life. In his place stood a hollow-eyed stranger facing decades behind bars. When he spotted me, his expression morphed from defeat to rage. "This is your fault," he shouted as officers restrained him. E sempre batido, feeling no embate ou dissatisfaction. Script part separator, The judge gavelled for order. "Mr. Phillips, contain yourself, or I'll have you removed." Richard's attorney placed a restraining hand on his arm, whispering urgently in his ear. The fight seemed to drain out of him as he slumped back into his seat. After the hearing, I walked slowly to my car, a weight lifting from my shoulders with each step. The autumn air felt crisp and clean, like the first real breath after nearly drowning. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "It's done. Dude denied by you. He's not going anywhere until trial." 3 weeks later, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. Jennifer appeared at my door, looking uncomfortable. "Mr. Mendez, there's someone here to see you." I told her you're not taking unscheduled appointments, but she's insistent. Before I could ask who, Nora appeared behind her. She looked different, humbler, wearing minimal makeup and simple clothes instead of her usual designer outfits. 5 minutes, Jonas. Please. I nodded to Jennifer, who retreated, closing the door behind her. "What do you want, Nora?" She placed an envelope on my desk. "My shares in the company. I'm signing them over to you. No conditions." I stared at her, suspicious. "Why?" "Because keeping them would be another form of theft." She met my gaze directly. "Richard will be in prison for at least 15 years. I got probation and community service. The difference is, I have to live with myself. Found your conscience a bit late, didn't you?" She flinched but didn't look away. "I deserve that. I deserve você." A pause. "The thing is, Jonas, I've had a lot of time to think about who I became with Richard. I don't recognize that person anymore. Iliane back my chair, studying her. What do you expect from me? Forgiveness? No." She shook her head firmly. "I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that not everything was a lie. Not in the beginning." I stood up, signaling our conversation was ending. "It does not matter anymore, Nora. The beginning, the middle, none of it matters now." After she left, I sat alone in my office, turning her envelope over in my hands. Inside were not only her company shares but a handwritten letter I couldn't bring myself to read. I locked it in my desk drawer, unsure if I'd ever want to know what she had to say. 6 months later, Richard's trial began. I testified for 3 grueling days, laying out the elaborate scheme he'd orchestrated. When the jury returned with a guilty verdict on all counts, I felt nothing but hollow vindication. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered around me, shouting questions. "Mr. Mendez, how does it feel to see justice served?" I paused, considering. Justice isn't about revenge. It's about truth. Today, the truth won. That evening, I sat on my deck watching the sunset, a glass of scotch in hand. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Celebration dinner?" Not tonight, I replied. I need some quiet. The house was mine again, refinanced and rescued from foreclosure. Most of my assets had been recovered, my company was thriving, and my reputation had been restored. By all measures, I'd won. Yet victory felt different than I'd imagined. As darkness fell, I thought about the man I used to be, trusting, open-hearted, believing in the goodness of others. That man was gone, replaced by someone wiser but harder. Someone who checked signatures twice and read the fine print. Someone who kept people at arm's length. Was this evolution or damage? Growth or loss? Perhaps both. My doorbell rang, startling me from my thoughts. When I opened it, there stood Jennifer, my loyal assistant who'd stood by me through everything. I know you said you wanted to be alone, she said, holding up a paper bag. But I brought dinner anyway. Eu show do TV alone tonight. For the first time in ages, I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. Coming. Sometimes the family we choose proves stronger than the one we build. Sometimes betrayal, with all its pain, leads us exactly where we need to be. That night, sharing a simple meal with a true friend, I realized my story wasn't ending. It was just beginning. It was just beginning. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't just surviving, it's thriving.